So welcome to the second Luxembourg Tomorrow panel discussion. We're going to continue where we left off last time, talk about macroeconomic factors, how they impact our lives here in Luxembourg. We're going to talk about Lux-specific drivers of innovation and a lot more. Joining us today, we have Patrick, who's a partner and the head of advisory and innovation at Deloitte. We have Sara, who's the director at Luxinnovation, the head of market intelligence. And we have Ravi from KPMG, who's their chief innovation officer. I also wanted to say thank you to everyone that's here in the audience. We have members of the CFA Society, we have members of the INSEAD Alumni Association. Welcome also to members of Oxford and Cambridge who have joined us the evening. The format for the evening. So we're going to start off with a panel discussion. That's going to be about 30 to 40 minutes. Once we finish, we'll open the floor up to Q&A for you guys. And after that, we head out to the bar for networking. Does that sound okay? Yeah. Super. All right, so let's start. We're going to start with a high-scale look into trends that are happening on a global basis, macroeconomic trends and how they impact us. So I'll address my first question to Sara. Sara, with so much going on in the world that directly impacts our lives in Luxembourg, you know, the war in Ukraine, the energy crisis, rising inflation, threats of a recession. Which of these factors do you think affects us the most, and what can Luxembourg do to address them?
Thank you, Prash, for the question. Good evening to all of you. I'll give an answer to your question, but maybe for those of you who don't know Luxinnovation, I just would like to say a few words about what we do, because you'll see that most of my answers will speak about innovation and companies, innovative companies in Luxembourg. So Luxinnovation is a national agency for innovation in Luxembourg. We are a public-private partnership. We are mainly funded by the Ministry of Economy, but the Ministry of Research is also contributing together with the FEDIL, the Federation of Industries, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Chambre des Métiers. So our main mission is to support companies to innovate in Luxembourg, but we also have a role to play to support the Ministry of Economy to diversify our economy, and that's why we also mostly focus on non-financial sectors. And that's why I think we'll be very complementary with my colleagues here in our answers. So coming back to your question, Prash, as I said, our mission is to support companies being innovative, being ready for tomorrow, so to address the different trends which are happening. And what we see is that while we are supporting them to be prepared for the future, many companies are currently struggling with present challenges. And I would like to focus on these challenges. Many issues they are facing are related to cash flow issues, finding the right people to work with them. That's something we will also address today. Increasing prices, of course, the increasing prices of energy, of raw materials, but also increasing prices of the workforce with a different index, which are implemented in Luxembourg. This is a big issue for companies. And there are other issues such as disruption of raw material supply chains, which affect them also a lot. So what can Luxembourg do to address them? I just would like to take the example of the increasing energy costs. This is a trend which is especially strong since the beginning of the war in Ukraine, and it's felt very much by companies which are active in energy-intensive sectors such as industry, where, for instance, for the heat production, they require or they need a lot of energy. Transportation are also transportation companies are also impacted. Agri-food or Oresca companies are also severely concerned by these increasing prices. And this impact is even stronger because most of these companies in our economy in Luxembourg are small and medium-sized companies. In the non-financial sectors, it's really a big part of our economy being made of these small and medium-sized companies. So in the case of increasing energy costs, the Luxembourg government has taken some short-term measures. For instance, they have managed to maintain the gas prices at a lower level. But this is something, if we take a look at the European level, not every country took the same measures to cap the energy prices, and this lack of common level playing fields for companies is an issue for the competitiveness of our many industries in Luxembourg. And these measures are also, will not be forever, they are meant for the moment to end at the end of this year. So in reality, the real issue for companies is to start thinking about the diversification of their energy supply or increasing their energy efficiency. And this is where innovation can play a role. There are different measures which can financially support innovative projects to address these issues. There is, for instance, the environmental law, which funds research and innovation projects for environmental innovation projects within companies. There were different measures taken. There were also, for instance, at the beginning of the year, a call for projects for photovoltaics. So all companies wanting to diversify their energy supply and become able to produce part of the energy they consume could apply to have a project where they could fund some photovoltaic panels on their plants, for instance. And at the beginning of the year, Luxinnovation has also announced, together with the Climat Agence and 3 different ministries, economy, energy, environment, we've announced the Climat Pact für Betriebe. And the idea is, with this Climat Pact, to build and centralize all the information, all the different programs, all the different funding opportunities which can be offered to the companies in Luxembourg to start their sustainability journey, including to address these energy issues. And one of the tools, for instance, which is proposed is Fit for Sustainability, which is a program which can help companies perform an environmental assessment, so understand how they perform and how do they impact the environment. And based on this assessment, which is made by external experts, and the program co-funds the cost of these external experts, companies can have or get an action plan with different measures they can take to address either energy efficiency issues, renewable energy issues as well, but also other sustainability-related topics. So through these examples, I just wanted to say that there are some things Luxembourg can do to address the impact of these megatrends. Maybe just a small comment to finish my answer is that funding opportunities in particular always require a co-funding capacity from a company. So these tools are addressed to companies who are able to have a long-term vision and who have also the financial capacity to implement them.
Super, thank you, Sara. I think you made some very pertinent points there about the rising cost of living, electricity, and how this impacts businesses and the role of regulation there. I think we will go deeper into that as the evening progresses. But before we do, Patrick, can I also direct the question at you?
Yeah, thanks, Pasha. So my background is more finance, so I will take probably the opposite sides of the impacts we want to discuss here. So the war in Ukraine, which was a surprise to all of us and a very bad surprise, has indeed triggered a crisis on the energy side and triggered inflation. But this crisis or this issue on the energy, we know that it was already written in the stars. I mean, we know that in the long term, energy prices will go up, and that's something we need to tackle as a whole. So it was not a complete surprise. It forced us to accelerate what was supposed to be done and what has to be done in the future. We are clearly not where we should be in terms of producing energy, and Luxembourg is still importing the largest part of what we consume in terms of electricity from Germany, where we do burn more coal than anything else. So what does it mean for the financial sectors? First, I mean, if we look at the balance sheet sides of the economy, I mean, the banks themselves, the fact that the economy is supported by the government will benefit for the bank. I mean, the cost of risk is the one thing which might go up for everyone who has a balance sheet to support those risks. So far, we don't see any sign going that way, both on the real estate side, which is a large part of what we have in Luxembourg, but as well on the classical lending side. If we look at the impacts on the asset management per se, both in private banking and the fund industry, on private banking, Luxembourg is still attracting quite a lot of assets, even if the capital market have taken a big hit last year, and we've seen for the fund industry liquid assets being shrinked or being reduced by close to 1,000 billion, which is one of the biggest impact over the last 10 years. But it will come back, and we see that the ecosystem which has been built in Luxembourg is strong enough to cope with those shocks, and I don't see any major risk in that respect. When it comes to the new business we're developing, especially the alternative business, even if the real assets which are invested are, let's say, more difficult to value nowadays than they used to be in the past, we know that the fund industry and the asset managers have still a lot of dry powder, so we are not too concerned either. So I would say that the financial industry will continue thriving if the government does the right thing for the local part of this financial industry on the classical economy. The 2/3 of the GDP in Luxembourg is made of non-financial services. We tend to forget it from time to time when you are versed into finance. But the key things I believe we should do more is keep on investing on these sustainable transitions as financial institutions. We channel trillions of money through the right investment, and Luxembourg has a very strong and central position in that space. EIB wants to become the climate bank for Europe. Lux SC is the largest stock exchange in terms of listing, so we should keep investing in transitioning, making sure that the money will go through the right projects to help the global economy to recover. Why? Because the war was just a signal, but the trends behind are much stronger. I mean, you all know, as you are from finance, CFAs, profiles, INSEAD profiles, the model from the Meadows Group or the Club of Rome in 72, I believe. I mean, we are not talking about something we don't know. We know that the transition has to happen, and circular economy, which are the points you mentioned as well, are key for the future of Luxembourg as a country, but for Europe and the world as a whole.
That's a great answer. Thank you, Patrick. The resilience that Luxembourg has shown through these crises, and specifically the point that you made about increased investment in the right projects, is something we should put a pin on to come back later. I think that was a very interesting point. But before we do, can I also talk about another macro trend, and direct this question at you, Ravi. How does KPMG handle the transition from working from home, remote work, and where do you see this going? Like, where do you see the future of work 3 to 5 years from now?
Thanks a lot. So I think we changed, right? So pre-COVID, we were mostly based in one set of premises, and then COVID happened, and then 2 years after, more or less, we said, or all our people were saying, we need to change the way we work. So one of the first things that we did was, like, we ran a kind of hackathon within the office. You know, what about the future of work? What about the hybrid work spectrum? What do we think of those? So lots of ideas came on. In the end, we looked at the whole kind of spectrum of hybrid work, from fully in one premise to mostly working from anywhere without any premises. And then we started looking at, within that spectrum, all the different notches. So the first one was, of course, still keeping the headquarters, but allowing more remote work. So there, for example, we have a recommendation that people come at least 3 days a week. So this is the recommendation. Now teams, we also let teams organize themselves, because we do a lot of teamwork. So teams need to coordinate to come into the office together, in a sense. And then people who are new, new candidates, junior people, those who need to be onboarded, there we recommend for them to be there full time, more or less, at least for the first 6 months, because it's more practical in that way. So that was like one notch. Second notch was to say, we got a lot of feedback from people who are living in the surrounding countries to say, okay, now we got used to not commuting that much, right? We have other habits, we would like to keep some of that. So last year we've opened up some offices around close to the borders. So one next to the Belgian border, one I think in Esch-Belval for the French contingent, and we're still looking for kind of the office close to the German border. Apparently the supply is even more reduced there, but we suppose that I think there will be something here in 2023. So that already gives some of the teams the flexibility to say, 1 or 2 days or 3 days a week we can work from there. Now we even had part of the population who said, we like it so much, we want to work from our country, right? And so we will find another job. So there we went even further to kind of the fully remote. So we said, well, what about working for us in a freelance mode or a contractor mode? Because we know how you work, you're trained, you're experienced in the way we work. So let's open that kind of option as well. So of course it's the first time, so we need to get kind of the sets of conditions, the rules, the orchestration of all this to happen properly. But we have some people who want to work in that kind of mode as well. There are those who want to work part-time. There are those who are kind of on the road towards retirement, but they don't want to kind of be living in a sunny place and don't work at all. So we can access them back. So in a way, it gives us access to a pool of talent that we would not have normally in Luxembourg. So we have these 3 options open. Different kind of, let's say, populations within our office are taking up each of these, and there's a mix. So we don't think it will go back to the old way. And the fact that if we want to keep, increasing our ambitions in terms of growth, we need access to more talent, more people. And if not all of them are in Luxembourg, we need to broaden this base to kind of outside Luxembourg. So using the Grande Région is kind of a good way, and allowing this, let's say, freelance mode of working as well helps sometimes youngsters as well, to say, okay, we can work from any place, anywhere, at least for 6 months, and then we come back, etc. So we're also seeing this kind of appetite for this kind of work.
Okay, great. That's some very, very insightful guidance, Ravi. I believe in the recent past there's been a lot of research as we've progressed through the pandemic about the importance of the social fabric at work, especially when you're ramping up and being able to upskill based on joint learnings with your colleagues. So I completely get your point about the importance of spending some time in the office, especially as a new employee. On your last point about the importance of talent acquisition, how does all of this play into the way you bring in employees? How does KPMG bring employees into Luxembourg, and what do you do to retain them?
So talent is there is a war for talent out there, right? And it's not easy. It's not easy. Certainly what we see is more difficult, and it doesn't affect only kind of the more experienced talent. Even the more junior talent, I think it's more difficult to go and find them, to bring them to Luxembourg. So we're looking at kind of both sets of populations, experienced talent and junior talent as well. Of course, we need to go further and further. We start with Luxembourg, but of course, traditionally has not been enough. So we look at the Grande Région, then we go elsewhere. We have to cope with, let's say, our language needs, need for kind of qualified accountants. So every time we go further and further, it requires us. So over the last 2 years, what we have seen is that we have kind of growth ambitions in terms of talent workforce as well. We have a higher turnover rate as well, because of course COVID made a lot of people think about what they really want, whether they want to be closer to family. A lot of our people are coming from outside of Luxembourg. So let's say the level of rotation is higher as well. So the way we deal with it, okay, of course we multiply our presence at job fairs, we multiply our use of recruitment agencies, we multiply our use of our own kind of network, KPMG network across the world for those who want to try other countries or who have family constraints or want to move. There has been also kind of a mindset change in the office, in the sense that before, recruitment was the responsibility of HR. Now recruitment is part of the objective of everyone, to say if you can identify relevant candidates in your network elsewhere, and if you can encourage them to apply, then that's kind of positive. So the mindset there has changed. In terms of our own processes for recruiting, interviewing, onboarding people, the fact that we are dealing with a higher volume, already we had to kind of take a step back and say, are we fit, to take on all this extra volume within the timings that we would like and the experience we would like to give the candidates? And of course the clear answer was no. So we have to transform ourselves on that side as well, to say, okay, how can we streamline our processes? How can we make more use of digital tools? How can we shorten the delays on our side at least to get the recruitment process going? So that's something we had to do internally. Also, I think when we find candidates out there, and here I'm moving more to the more experienced candidates, in a way they already kind of are quite happy where they are, right? So we need to find the reasons which would make them move, the extra things. So there we have to be ready to kind of listen and adapt our offers, the role, the position, maybe empower them on certain things they had always wanted to try but could never try because there was so many constraints. So the idea is to say, okay, what is the potential of the candidate in our environment, rather than just what has been their past experience so far, and be able to make a match, of course, between that and our strategy and our purpose. So if we can align that, of course, there's a bit of risk on our side because we need to make an assessment. Then we manage to convince them. Then, when they're coming, of course, then we need to be sure that if they're coming with family, how do we help them to get settled, etc., etc. So I think the question is volume, trying to find more people. And what we also see is a lot of people come and then they spend a few months. I think if you spend 6 months, you are in, right? Because you get used to the new routine, you get used to Luxembourg. But even within the 6 months, some people say, oh, finally, no, my family situation is different, I will go back. Sometimes people move without the family just to test it, right, for the first year. So that's all these kind of cases, but it forces us in a way to adapt, to remain agile, to try to attract, let's say, some of the profiles.
That's great, thank you, Ravi. I love the focus on modernizing the recruitment process, getting more digital, involving the rest of the firm in the process. That's great advice. Patrick, Deloitte also hires a lot of people. Can I also ask you about how you go about attracting top talent to Luxembourg and how you keep them here?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what has been said, and that's no surprise, is similar with us. But I would probably start with taking a step back and positioning the challenge we have for Big Fours and in Luxembourg in general. We have an ecosystem where, I mean, a lot of people you hire in your own organizations are probably hired from Big Fours. Somehow that's the model we are living in. We hire on average probably 800 people a year, and we lose 600 to the industry, very few to competitors and very few from competitors. So we are the channel to find the right people, to train them, and to somehow allow them to go to the market at some stage for some of them. So the challenge is huge. In the past, we were somehow able to source people from Luxembourg and surrounding countries. Nowadays, that doesn't work that much anymore. So we have, as Ravi said, we have to invent new ways to go further. Further means Europe, but outside of Europe as well. And just to give you one or two numbers, this year we had 300 working permits processed by Foreign Ministry, compared to 100 3 years ago. And people coming from outside of Europe represents 15% of the staff, which was close to nothing probably 10 years ago. And it will not go the other way around. I mean, it will keep on increasing over time. We have people coming from far away, because I mean, Luxembourg has become less competitive in terms of salary as well. So we are very expensive. The cost of living makes the business case for Luxembourg more complex for French, Belgian, and German. To give you another number, we have for consulting an open days event, 2 or 3 days of business cases and testing. In a few weeks, 40% of the people who have registered are coming from Italy. Why is Luxembourg being still considered as a good spot for starting a career? I do believe because English is enough. I mean, we don't force people to speak either French or German. I mean, English might be enough in some cases. Of course, I mean, the clients are insisting on keeping French and German as common languages as well, but it's become more and more complex to find people who can support all those languages. So the fact that we have to go far away means as well that a lot of those new joiners and consultants or senior consultants will probably find Luxembourg as a good place to start a career. And after 2 or 3 years of corporate finance in Luxembourg, they're going to move to London or to a place where the salary will be 3 times higher. So that's a challenge we have, and I can testify, like Ravi, that we are putting a lot of efforts in trying to find the people we need to grow, but it will be challenging to keep up that way in the future. And you can see, if you look at the numbers, taking the Big Fours, but not only, if you look at the growth numbers we publish every year, they are more and more decorrelated from the number of people we hire, or we have. Meaning that technology is replacing people, meaning that nearshore and offshoring is used more than it used in the past, which was not the case in Luxembourg in many Big Four in the past, but I mean, it's difficult to find people, so you have to find ways to serve your clients. And of course, it goes the wrong way. Indexing the salaries, increasing the salary grids to attract more people means that we are even less attractive in terms of competitiveness when it's about to export our people outside of Luxembourg. Luxembourg was one of the cheapest way, all costs included, in the surrounding countries like 25 years ago when I started. I could, as a consultant in Luxembourg, work in Brussels, being less expensive than someone in Brussels working in town at the time, due to all the costs which were lower in Luxembourg. It's not the case anymore. So how can we improve this? Yeah, I mean, support from the government on the housing issue is probably one of the best thing we could think about, especially in a year of election. Simplification of the processes we have to go through for foreign citizens who have to get a permit. It's still very complex and time-consuming. Having more support as well from banks and probably employers as well on helping our employees or future employees to find a place. It's not just a question of price, it's a question of offering. There is no place enough for people coming from far away, and they can't live outside of Luxembourg like some of us might. So it's a real complex situation we have to deal with. But it's something we need to crack, and I'm not sure that in the future, again, the growth of the FTEs will follow the growth of the revenues, both for technology reasons and delivery model reasons. Delivery centers will take a bigger role. That's my view.
Thank you, Patrick. The Big Four are some of the biggest employers in Luxembourg, so I'm not surprised about the high quality of advice that we're getting. I also want to quickly touch upon the point you made, Patrick, about the high cost of living in Luxembourg and your ideas about regulatory or support from the government in addressing that. And let's put a pin on that and come back to that. But before we move ahead to that, I just wanted to quickly come back to you, Sara. I want to talk about Luxinnovation again. So Luxinnovation has had incredible growth spurt over the last few years and has been driving the philosophy of innovation amongst Luxembourg's businesses. What I wanted to ask you was, where is the next spurt of growth going to come from? What are the disrupting factors? Where do we see future growth coming from?
Yes, so as I said in introduction, Luxinnovation is a non-profit organization, so our growth is not seen in monetary terms, although we have hired quite a lot of people recently, and this does have an impact on our budget, but we have a fixed budget and funding by our partners. So we see a growth in mainly around three main objectives in the near future. Our first objective is really to increase awareness on innovation among companies in the non-financial sectors, but companies in the financial sectors can also develop innovative projects. Many companies still think that innovation is not something for them. They really need to have a technology or to digitalize or to do research activities. So there is this kind of misleading understanding of what innovation is, while we really promote a quite broad view of innovation, which is basically as soon as you implement something which is new to your firm, you're innovating. So you can work on your business model, you can work on your process, you can work on a new product, of course, but innovation is quite broad in this sense, and our objective is to catch more and more companies and support them in their innovation projects. We also, as a second objective, would like to build more on the current innovation capabilities we have. As Patrick said, innovation is also critical to address the current trends, and especially in terms of digitalization or sustainability. And we want to be sure that companies who are already innovative in Luxembourg can make the most out of all the different funding opportunities or support programs we can offer to them. So just one example, there are some companies applying to get national funding for a project, and one logical way for some of them would be to apply afterwards for European funding. And we can also support them in combining these different types of opportunities to work on innovation. And the first objective is also to be, we say it in French, to be force de proposition for the ecosystem. Some innovative projects are not only run at company level, but should be run at the level of the economy. And because we're working every day with companies, we also understand their needs, and we're also in the position to make some proposals to the government, to the Ministry of Economy mainly, to start new projects at ecosystem level. One example of this project can be, for instance, we are working on a deconstruction platform, which will be both a physical and digital platform where material which will come from the destruction of some buildings can be reshaped and then purchased by other companies to build new buildings. And this is a type of project we support and which can help our economy to to achieve the sustainability transition we've been mentioning already quite a few times. We're also, for instance, working on how to include innovation criteria into public procurement policies. This is not always the case, and we think that this would be something that could really accelerate innovation in the ecosystem. So to achieve this ambition, we are also working on ourselves with the innovation agency, so we try to be innovative ourselves, just to, if we can lead by example. And we've worked on our own strategy 1 year ago. It's public, you can find it on our website. And if you read it, you will see that one of our strategic goals is to become a data-driven organization. So we are also now working on our different systems. For the recruitment as well, we are going to adopt digital tools, but we are also now reworking on our CRM system, for instance, to collect better information on our different customers, to understand who they are, what is our profile, how do they innovate, so that we can understand and maybe adapt the different programs we propose to them and stick to the needs they express in their innovative projects.
Oh, thank you, Sara. I guess a lot of very, very good tidbits of information there, especially about big data, the need for innovation. Thank you very much, Sara. I'd like to take a slightly higher view at another very, very important global trend. Patrick, can I come to you for this? We've seen in the news of late a lot of these firms talking about layoffs, letting employees go. My perception is that in Luxembourg, we've seen lesser of this. Do you feel similarly? And if so, what do you think has us in a better situation?
I mean, I read the press like everyone. I can see some statistics. I mean, some layoffs have been announced. Some manufacturing units have been stopped as well, which doesn't mean layoff yet. But Luxembourg is made of, as you mentioned, Sarah, a lot of small and mid-sized companies which are probably less prone to those big waves of layoff. And that's one hand. And the other hand, we are very strong in financial services. And financial services, we have seen some banks laying off part of their staff, but probably more by, let's say, opportunity to improve their efficiency at this stage, considering that a lot of growth is still coming. But my main concern is not the number of layoffs we're going to see in the press in Luxembourg. I mean, to come back on my previous points on the difficulties we have to hire people in the market. Anyone who has good skills in technology nowadays or in finance has a job. And if you can find us, I would say, 100 or 200 of those guys, tonight we're gonna find them jobs. And it's not being arrogant, it's just a fact. We are living. I mean, technology profiles, for instance, are so difficult to source nowadays that the rates or the cost is going up strongly for sometimes quality which is challengeable. So it's not a market which is driven by the demand, but which is driven by the offer, which is never good in terms of, let's say, value for quality or quality you find when you have such a short offering in the market. For the FSI, I mean, that's something we might discuss during the Q&A, but I've got a strong feeling that we are still lacking some investment in new technologies. I mean, things are moving fast when you see what Germany is doing in terms of future of manufacturing, Factory 4.0, Industry 4.0. We have some very good examples in Luxembourg, but probably we could do better. But it's more an impression than an analysis by myself.
Okay, some very good strengths about Luxembourg there. Ravi, can I come to you with the same question?
I think Patrick covered a lot of it. I think it's, as you say, in Luxembourg, because we have kind of a shortage of talent. If we look at where the layoffs are happening, it was because they kind of over-recruited in anticipation of future growth. And now they are like saying, okay, no, it's probably not there in the time frames we had in mind. So we are not, in a way, in that sort of situation because we could not recruit the amount we wanted to recruit. So from that perspective, let's say we are not at overcapacity, as you said, Patrick. If tomorrow we probably can get access to those tech talent that we would not normally have got access to, so probably we can go and find them now, and we'll happily recruit some more of those profiles. So I think Patrick has covered everything.
Thank you, Ravi. I want us to go back to a point we touched upon earlier in this conversation. We spoke about the cost of living in Luxembourg. We spoke about real estate prices in Luxembourg. The question I have is, how does this affect talent acquisition in Luxembourg? Ravi, can I keep it with you for this question?
Yeah, sure. So I think we mentioned cost of living as well before. So it is, we have at KPMG, I think 56% of our employees are resident in Luxembourg. So it is a substantial proportion. The feedback from new joiners, of course, is that accommodation costs are a pain point. They need to find more and more reasons to justify the move, from France, from Belgium to come to Luxembourg. So we need to find ways, let's say, within Luxembourg to reduce. Well, either we can reduce the costs. There are two angles at it. Either we can reduce the cost or we can increase the remuneration package, right? So there are two ways. So how do we reduce the cost of accommodation? So there, okay, we are raising up ideas where can there be tax incentives, around accommodation costs. Getting relief for people who are coming to Luxembourg. If the employer is making efforts and to put accommodation at the disposal of the employees, can there be tax sometimes incentives to enable that to happen? So these are kind of open questions. Of course, it kind of goes round and round, but these are the things which can try to reduce the pain point, at least for our people. That's kind of more short term. If we look at the other side of the equation to say, okay, how can we increase the salaries? So what does that mean? That means probably we have to transform a bit our jobs to move higher up in the spectrum. So we spend more time doing higher value work, and at the same time kind of compensate with saying these are the lower value added kind of tasks, which we can either offshore or use technology, to get it cheaper. So we keep the equation from a business perspective, at least that makes sense. And therefore we can afford in a way to have higher remuneration to deal with higher cost of living. I think it would be good to work on both aspects and not just the first aspect, so that we can start seeing some progress.
Yeah, that 56% of KPMG employees being residents is a number that stands out to me. I'm sure at Deloitte, Patrick, you guys have a large proportion of your employees also as residents. How do you tackle this?
You mean a lot of people who are non-resident, or?
No, just in general about the cost of living, the property prices affecting your employees and like acquisition of talent.
It's difficult for us as well. I mean, we have 55% of residents as well. So commuters have a hard time to join Luxembourg nowadays, considering the traffic jams we have, especially coming from France, where the motorway, as far as I understand, is on the work for 4 years. But we try to accommodate. To try to find the best balance in terms of, for balancing the output we expect with the flexibility we can provide. For instance, and that's not coming out of COVID, we have a full flexibility policy for residents because that's feasible for years. So people can arrange themselves at team level to optimize the way they're working. When it's coming to non-resident, and that's something we should probably try to change as a country, is the limitations we have with commuters is painful. So we try to accommodate as well, considering the tax schemes we are playing within the hours they can use to get to the office. So working from home for some hours and joining the office later on, if this is feasible from a business perspective and a client perspective, it makes a better case for them and for us, because I mean, a happy employee is someone who stays. So that's basically about that. We had to increase as well the perks or the salaries and plenty of things over time to make sure that we kept our workforce interested to keep a long-term vision in Luxembourg. So it's not a question of, I guess the same for KPMG, not leaving a firm per se, because I mean most of the people living are not unhappy with the firm. They just want to have a better let's say working conditions in terms of salaries. So I mean going outside of Luxembourg where the housing conditions or the housing accommodations or the accommodation cost is lower makes a lot of sense. That's pretty much about that.
Cool. We've touched upon a lot of strengths that Luxembourg has as a hub. What strengths do you think we should build upon to continue increasing our viability as a hub for business, to attract investment, to attract talent?
I will be short. Probably starting with a story. I mean, years ago, I was once with many others invited to a roundtable called the Comité de la Place Financière for the fintech. And at the time, it's a non-subject. It was a non-subject. First question we had to raise was, what is a fintech? To position the level of awareness we had at the time. And this Au Comité de la Place Financière, head by Nicolas Maquel, led to the creation of many things. I mean, Luxembourg for Finance was there or being created at the time. Loft, Luxembourg House of Fintech, was created. And when you see what we have achieved over the last, let's say, 10 years in terms of positioning Luxembourg as a hub for fintech innovation, with a vivid ecosystem of startups. There were no startups or close to years ago. Now we have plenty of them. We can change the fact that they're going to be, I mean, growing fast enough, or they can find funding when it comes to round A, round B, or whatever. But still, we see a lot of innovations coming in and being interested as well for many VC funds outside of Luxembourg. So if we can manage to do the same for the sustainability initiatives, leveraging EIB as the climate bank, leveraging Lux Stock Exchange as the green stock exchange, leveraging the new initiatives, the LSFI, Luxembourg Sustainable Finance Initiative, which is an agency to support sustainability, we might do the same for this new topic, which is probably a good driver for pushing Luxembourg forward.
Yeah, we're quite lucky to have very dynamic organizations in LFF and Loft. Lot of very innovative work that's pushed us forward. Sara, can I come to you? In the same breath, can I ask you, like Luxembourg has also faced challenges over the last few years that we're working to overcome. What challenges should we address to increase our attractiveness for talent and investment?
Challenges and not strengths. But maybe I'll say a few words about the strengths of our ecosystem, maybe to complete what Patrick said. We also have this trade and invest mission at Luxinnovation, meaning that we have a team of business developers going abroad and trying to attract companies to Luxembourg, especially with the objective to attract in our ecosystem competences, technologies which we know are not present yet in our ecosystem and which are important or critical even for our digital and sustainable transition. And something which is quite important, and we've worked with all the different stakeholders involved in this international prospection activities to establish a common narrative so that we would all speak the same language. LFF was also part of this process. And a very simple argument is also the position of Luxembourg in Europe. A good argument for non-European companies is that they can, from Luxembourg, address the rest of the European market. And in this context, our international dimension, the different languages we speak is an asset for our economy. And we have people speaking French. This allows addressing the French market, and the opposite is not true. And same thing for Germany. We have German-speaking people who can help addressing the German market. So just one example, we attracted in 2021 a South Korean company called Data Design Engineering. They're specialized in AI. And they came to Luxembourg to build their European headquarters. To be fair, I have to say that they also had the first customer in Luxembourg. They were working already with Gradel, and that's maybe more related to the challenging part. Finding the first customer for companies is also a key element, and for this, we can do better in Luxembourg to expand this open innovation dimension. And maybe another element which is also quite important is that Luxembourg, being a small country, can also be seen as a test bed or living lab environment. And different companies can come, test the solution, maybe get relevant certifications to address the European market before they can deploy at a broader level. And this is what happened, for instance, with a company coming from Australia called Omayo. They won a contract with the CFL to provide an autonomous self-driving shuttle to ensure the last mile transportation aspects. And so they not only won the contract with CFL, but they also decided to establish an entity in Luxembourg to be able to get the different European certifications for this kind of autonomous shuttles, so that they can afterwards address other European countries. So these living lab conditions can also be attractive for companies scaling up or with the good prototypes and who want to deploy them in a broader way over the European market. And just something I always like to remind also, historically, if we see the history of Luxembourg and if we see how the economy has changed over the last century, 100 years ago, it was mainly an economy dominated by agriculture, then came the steel industry, then the finance, and now we're focusing more on space sectors, fintech sectors, and we do have some challenges, but we can recognize that we can be quite good when we are positioning ourselves on some niche markets, or being front runner in addressing some challenges. And that's really something which the Ministry of Economy would like to achieve. Luxembourg is also the first country in Europe which articulated in economic strategies twin goals of digitalization and sustainability. And this is also where we have something to offer for the different investment.
Cool. Thank you, Sara. Ravi, can I also come to you for the same question? What challenges do you think we should address to increase our attractiveness for talent and investment?
So I'd like to cover a bit. From an asset management industry, Luxembourg is really strong today, right? In today's environment. In tomorrow's environment, in a digital economy, in a platform economy, how are we going to retain that position or build that position? So Patrick mentioned that, okay, we've started with the loft, the fintech side of things. Sara mentioned ecosystem. I mean, in the asset management industry, we have always been proud that we had an ecosystem that since kind of the introduction of the law and usage that got together, mobilized, and worked together to kind of sell Luxembourg to the outside world. So I think here the challenge we need is to be able to say, how does the ecosystem, the various actors, so at the ALFI we also discussed about this, how do we combine with the fintechs? Of course we are in a regulated world, but how can we do more experiments to start shaping, what is today's or tomorrow's role we will play in Luxembourg in the digital economy, in the platform economy, in the asset management, but not only asset management. If we manage to do it well, of course these kind of areas also give us the platform to go wider than Luxembourg, right? Because in the data economy you can cross borders easier than with the normal economy. So the idea, or here I would like to be more provocative, is that we are not doing enough together. There are pieces happening in pockets, but we're still not doing enough experiments as an ecosystem to say, let's get up to that level and let's do more. So if we start doing more of that, then that itself is a magnet to bring more, let's say, people with tech knowledge, with platform knowledge, with business models in mind, where they say, I've never had this opportunity in Europe to work on these kind of things. There's potential for me to do my startup, to launch my idea, etc., or to learn fast, to fail fast, etc., etc. So I think that would be something that will give us the next step if we manage to do that. I think the different associations are starting to go in that direction, to say let's do some things together. So there are steps in the direction, and we just need to increase the momentum behind this in a way. So that would complement the fact that that will by itself attract a lot of people, a lot of interest. The fact that Luxembourg is small, is agile enough, and if we can innovate on certain things, then it brings attention. A few years ago there was like an initiative around funds TLT, blockchain. Luxembourg was the first. It attracted a lot of attention, and now they are making their course. But we need more examples of these kind of things to make it happen. So that's one thing. The other thing is some of the things or the pain points, current pain points, if we compare to Ireland or other jurisdictions in Europe. We come back to the fact that sometimes what we see, I was speaking to our HR head earlier this afternoon, and she was saying, of course, to get work permits in Luxembourg now, the delay is kind of, if you compare to last year, it's much longer. So that's a point of frustration for the candidates. If people come with spouses, of course, the spouses can be qualified, but they don't automatically have work permits. So basically, there's resource there that is untapped. So these are some of the kind of small things which we can still address to make it even more attractive. And last but not least, I think tax incentives is always nice when we compare with other countries.
Thank you very much, Ravi. There were a few points there that some of our members have been talking about a lot, especially the tapping into the talent pool that's already available when partners come with their spouses who are already working here. I think something that Darren's been talking about a lot over the last few weeks. Well, we're almost out of time for the panel discussion bit, but before we close, there's one last question I'd like to ask each of our panelists. It's in line with the whole recruitment and talent acquisition theme. The question I want to ask is, what words of wisdom would you pass on to our members here if they want to aspire to work for your organizations? Can we start with you, Patrick?
Thanks, Prashanth. That's something I'm usually asked to give to the cohort of new joiners we usually have on a yearly basis. So that's something I'm used to. But they are usually a bit younger than the average here. But it might still fit. Let's see. My 3 or 5 cents, but my 3 points are first. Keep learning. Learning is something you have done, which has led you up to here. But you can be sure that stopping learning will mean dying for most of us. Things are moving so fast, so keep learning all day long, all years long. Be surrounded by books you can't read because there are too many, just to remind you that you know nothing actually, and you have to keep investing every other day in learning new things. The second thing I'm usually telling them is keep building your network again every other day, every other hour. Any opportunity is an opportunity for building a network. In a world where ChatGPT and other tools will possibly take over a lot of the mundane tasks we were supposed to deliver in the past, the one thing which will stay is the human touch. And if we lose that touch, we lose everything. So building the network, combining that with knowledge, and knowledge doesn't mean content, it's connecting the dots, creating new things, innovating by expanding your networks. And that's the two things I usually tell them. And the last thing is, because life is short, I usually use the Steve Jobs commencement day at Stanford. You might have seen it when he is addressing the new students or the new students who have been graduated, and he tells them at the end, the one advice I'm giving you is to stay hungry, which is about being eager to gain knowledge, and stay foolish. And I believe that life is too short to be too serious, so it's good to be strong on learning, to be strong on building those things, but keeping a bit of fun in everyone's life is not something you need to get rid of when you start a consulting career or whatever career. And I believe it works for all of us here. That's my 3 points.
It's difficult to speak after Patrick, but I also have a quote from Steve Jobs.
Too bad.
But it's more, and I'll say it. So what he said was that innovation is the ability to see change as an opportunity, not a threat. And because we were discussing today macroeconomic trends and the impact they can have, we know that it can be difficult for everyone, for companies, but we really believe that every time there is a difficulty, there is also an innovation opportunity. And I can also suggest that this is important, something important for companies, but also maybe at personal level. That's a state of mind which helps dealing and coping with all these continuous changes we are seeing happening.
Yes, I will not be too far away.
Steve Jobs?
3 times in a row.
Elon Musk.
No, I won't quote Steve Jobs in this occasion. Maybe I'll quote somebody else. What I would say is, I think keep an open mind. Be ready to challenge the status quo. So that, I don't know whether that comes from Steve Jobs or not, maybe it is. Be ready to learn, because we are learning every day. And be ready to kind of be energized as a team player, because as a team we go further than individually. So maybe I'll land with a quote with I think it's Michael Jordan who said, he said, "Talent wins games, but teamwork and intelligence wins championships."
Thank you, guys. Well, our panelists will still be around as we transition to the cocktails and the networking session. Let's give our panelists a round of applause. Thank you for their time.